Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. And I want to thank you for joining me today doing this weekly discussion series focusing on the book Jesus in Our Days. As we go each week looking at a different chapter, we can see now that we will focus on the 12th chapter, which is about responsibility. And I'd like to remind you that the psychological series by Joanna de Angelis in collaboration with Divaldo Pereira Franco is such a powerful and impactful discussion. I am honored to be here with you and to be able to present some of the main topics, some main ideas found in this book. And also want to remind you that the goal of the series of live talks is to make sure we're able to dive a little deeper, a little, discuss a little longer the messages that are quite insightful and important to also know as a psychological series. Yes, there are many, many books, 16 in total, and this is just the first book. Jesus in Our Days is a small book. I'd like to remind everybody I have it in front of me. It's just, maybe a quarter of an inch thick. Um, it contains, right, as the title says, Jesus in Our Days, it contains different perspectives of who and how Jesus was and how we relate to him in reference to those topics of discussion. And I'm just really in awe because no matter how much I read and I go deeper, I am taken by the fact that it continues to touch me, to teach me. And I want us to, before we move on, to remind us also of the fact that Joanna de Angelis, as the author, she brings what she calls an uncrucified Jesus. So today is really important because the notion of an uncrucified Jesus is key. Today, 9th of April of 2023 is Easter. And that's exactly that Jesus that we are talking about. It's that one that went to the cross and suffered and went through everything that he had, all the ordeals that he had to go through, accusations, judgment, torture, right? And he goes through this and fulfills his mission, but that's not the end. Today we celebrate the real goal, which is I'm no longer crucified. I am free. I am not dead. I am free. And I'm here to tell you about this message of life after life. So, back to the book, I wanted to say those teachings are truly therapeutical, and as such, they lead us to the concept of what we need and how do we go about attaining health and peace and, yes, happiness. So, 20 chapters, we are on the 12th today, Jesus and responsibility. And we start our discussion today with the notion of sacrifice, right? And the words that come to mind when I read the subchapter are notions of, yes, responsibility, but how do we deal with duties, responsibility, and guilt, and many times depression as we face our own conscience. So if I remote to my professional days, right? So if I go back to me and my day-to-day job, and I often start a project with a tool called a RACI, or some people call it a Rocky. RACI just means responsible, accountable, consulted, or informed. So let's focus on the two first ones, responsible and accountable. And if we were to put ourselves in a position to create a responsible, accountable table while we live in this lifetime, in this world, and I say this very purposefully because we often talk about the types of the world. This is academic categorization, mind you, but as we talk about the different types of worlds, from the primitive worlds all the way to celestial worlds, right, the happy worlds, we see that we worlds go through an evolution, and we as immortal souls inhabiting those worlds, we also go through an evolution, and we fit in a world based on our own set of values and how mature we are as a spirit. So back to the category of worlds, we are in the second out of the five, which is worlds of trials and atonements, or trials and expiations. And knowing that trials and expiations, right, that's where we live, and we could say, what are our responsibilities and what are the things that we're accountable for? So easy, if we transport back to the discussion here, we are accountable for everything we chose to do. Simple as that. Following the law of our freedom, our free will, we are free to choose, but we are responsible for what we've done. What is the resulting impact of our choices or free will, right? So that's our responsibility, which includes what we have to amend for, and our so uh, atonement, usually we think in terms of past mistakes, failure, right? But we are accountable for those mistakes. We're responsible for learning through the process of reparation. Let me repeat that. Those are my words, but this is really, it makes me understand easier, better the concept, right? So we learn through the process of making amends, dealing with the impact of potential harming or breaking or failing or whatever it is that we chose to do, then we are responsible for making amends, right? But it's a responsibility to learn from them. And so this is an educational journey. And because of that, we are accountable only for our mistakes, our failures, and that includes this life and previous lives as well. So I'm accountable, therefore, I am responsible to amend, to fix, if you will, and to learn, most important, to learn while I'm doing that. So it is simple. We can stop our discussion today, but let's keep going. We have a few more minutes. So, as I said, this is my opinion, but what did Joanna says on the matter? Well, she warns us about how, my word, conniving we are, right? On one hand, we avoid our responsibility. How do we do this? We avoid that by outsourcing our accountability to other people, right? So I don't own, I'm not accountable for this mistake because I was born into this family, some people say, right? I didn't ask to be alive, others say. Yet others would say it's really because of fate, because of bad luck, or because of circumstances, because of the culture environment, because of the war, because. So this is the number one issue is outsourcing the accountability and the responsibility to amend those things that we are accountable for. And because of it, we feel we really feel, we really get into it, this sense of victimization. I am a victim of my circumstances, right? Or number two, I know I am accountable, right? I made a mistake. I am so accountable that I feel so guilty. And the guilt leads me to such a turmoil of feelings of sometimes anger, sometimes of sadness that can lead to pathological state of depression. So on one hand, we avoid, on the other hand, we accept, but you accept it without love for ourselves, and we get into this guilt ridden complex that may lead to depression. Not good either way, right? So Joanna comes then in this book to tell us, child, I see her thinking that, my child, the true sense of responsibility has to deal with the awakening of your conscience. Love it. True responsibility and awareness and conscience, right? So when you are conscious, or you don't fall prey to avoiding the blame or to feeling so guilt. This is, I'm aware that I've done this, and now there is an impulse within me to accept accountability and be responsible, to understand and learn from those deeds, those mistakes, those failures, whatever you want to call it, right? So when we get to that point of an awakened conscience, then we are ready to understand, why am I even alive? Why am I here? What is the goal of this life? And as a final step of that awareness, it is the courage to take on whatever role may be that will lead to that objective. Remember back, the objective is education, is learning, it is growth. So when that happens, the person that we are going to call the truly responsible person is now, it's just there's a sense of a mission, there's a sense of courage, there's a sense of energy and fulfillment, actually, because I now have an action plan. And this is, again, I'm going back to my project management days, when I have a set series of actions that I am now going to take on, and I am responsible, as in I am directly doing those. I am going to address it specifically, each one of those tasks in my action plan. So when I have that action plan, all the fear of the unknowns, all of the anger, all of the sadness, all of the things that are so strong within our emotional state, just start to go away, because I know, and this is your life, right? This is not, I'm going to build a house, I'm going to create a company. This is your life that we're talking about. So now we have a plan, we go about doing it, and we feel now a sense of plenitude, a sense of completeness, of wholeness, because I have a mission, I have a set direction, and I know what I want to do about my life, right? So when I do this, I also start relying on other people's effort, right? Isn't it fun how it all correlates? It's just so simple. But I no longer have to wait for, say, a nonprofit organization to provide me with a meal. And this is not apology for anything. I'm just saying things that come to my mind. But I don't rely on a meal. I don't rely on even the kindness of strangers. I don't rely on somebody, let's say, I was watching a series this couple of days on a British series, and it's just a theme that comes over and over again is that very posh society members that came from an aristocratic heritage, and there's a sense that I don't have to work because I will inherit this. No, a truly responsible person does not even think about it. It doesn't matter that my family is so wealthy and I have been endowed with all of this. No, I feel the notion of being responsible to carrying on, and so I may even decline utilizing this wealth. I am here to really reach specific goal, and I am really learning. So by going through the process without outsourcing to others or leveraging from others' success, I am going through that learning that comes through the experience of the process. How do I go about doing it? How do I choose to do it? How that choice really can help me be a better person, right? So in many ways, those become great leaders, life leaders that we have around us. So I just want you to take a moment to perhaps think about any of those in your life today that are just that demonstrate their leadership, that demonstrate their desire, the impulse to take on, to take charge of their lives. I can think of several in my mind's eye just as I say this out loud. But those people, they they bring that lucidity and their awareness, their experience, their guru like a vision and wisdom that they become so valuable to a society and a social group as a whole, right? They bring security, they bring awareness, and they may even go unnoticed in their lifetimes. But once they're gone, their absence absolutely will be felt because either they were glued to that social group or they're behind supporting that group to be better at what they're doing. So it's really beautiful to understand that, and I have it in the screen, right? That about the social beings, but important for us to think about it. That responsibility drives people many times to a sense of sacrifice and sometimes even extreme sacrifices, right? They go through a life of self-denial, and they sacrifice or renounce even their well-being to get to a certain purpose, to attain a certain purpose. And let's think about that as we proceed the next few minutes together. So, love it. I love it. I love it. Go and sin no more. Right. And I wrote it down from Joanna. As the shepherd of souls, Jesus has taken responsibility for us, enlightening us regarding our duties, true needs, and real objectives. So it's almost like we are, I don't know, in those rooms, the escape rooms that we don't know what to do, but we have to look for clues to finally get to the key to get out. right? And if you think about it, we may ask, okay, Jesus, how did you do this? Well, he did that just by living. His life is a testimony to help us understand the notion of responsibility. He taught us that. He healed us, many of us, with just by being there and looking at us. And that's the notion that I would like to highlight here, this healing notion. And but again, because of the day that we are in, it's very amazing that we're here celebrating together Easter. But he gave himself, right? He gave himself in a moment of death to celebrate life. And then we have to say, what a sacrifice of love, right? Today, Easter, we are reminded uh, of how Jesus called upon us, each one of us, to embark in our different, very not lonely, but different, lone journeys on earth, right? And He called us to really take on all the to embrace the potentialities of our souls. So during his time, and we have many, many accounts, Jesus knew each person that he came in contact, what were those potentialities, what did they need to go through, why they were suffering, for instance. So he reminded in those encounters everyone who came upon him, right, who sought him, and he right there, he would just remind them of their responsibility. Responsibility, Mr. Ma'am, whomever, is to redeem yourself, to become open to all the great achievements that is there awaiting for us. So it is our responsibility, back to the beginning, responsibility to redeem myself by um, amending the things that I have done that I caused pain, for example, to ask for forgiveness if that's the case, that's the process. But in the process that I am redeeming, I'm achieving, I'm opening myself to all the greatness that exists within all of us. So, Jesus, when he was here, he had this transcendental view, and he knew, right, the each one of our souls in its full reality, not what we portray, not our facade, our public persona, if you will. He could see throughout all of that unknown to us. And with that one look, he could identify the source of our pain and the source of all of our blessings in that particular moment. So, if we go back to the definition that I started with of the world of trials atonement, it's really important to understand at this stage of our own evolution, we, all of us are undergoing some sort of trial, right? Some sort of test. And that those are here for us so that they're testing us and they're pushing us to lead to a higher state. Have I learned this lesson? You can move up, if you will. And moving up is simply means we are uh, in our ascensional, right, in the evolutionary type of path, we're going to a higher level in our spiritual maturity. In turn, it also leads us to a different, and this is beautiful to me, a different view of ourselves, right? Because when we go through this awakening of our conscience, we see ourselves completely different, a little closer to how Jesus saw us. So for all the atonement, all the amendments of amends in our sense of reparation for all the wrongdoings that we have done, right? We need to think about how to really fill ourselves with perhaps patience, perhaps resignation, because it is our path. I often remember a good friend of mine that would talk about, just a very mundane example, how we want to uh, start to build in your body. And I don't start with, oh, I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to do 5 bicep curls and boom, my biceps will be super defined. No, it's a process. And in the process, it often involves pain and commitment. I have to keep going back and I have to keep doing, looking at how I do it so that I can get to the end goal of whatever I want to look at or however I want my muscles to be strong at. So um, the sense here in this discussion is that there is an end game, and the end game is really awakened conscience, or what many people call the journey of inner transformation. And it is, I believe, our greatest challenge, because in this challenge, we have two countering impositions. Number one, we do have our gift, right, which is our free will, our our choices, our will, our desire. And on the other hand, countering to this, we know that whenever we utilize our free will, and in the process we either fail or we hurt, we harm something, we are now responsible for making amends or repairing those things that we have done. So from that perspective, if we look into the slide that I'm presenting, which headlines "Go and Sin No More," we are reminded that Jesus would say in life, right, on earth, about 2,000 years ago, "Go and sin no more." And somebody was asking, how could Jesus say that? Because in inherent in this sentence is the fact that sin no more is that we would never sin anymore. And if you use the word sin to say we fail, right, that's not a possibility. We're not perfect spirits yet. So, in our own imperfections, it is a fatality, if you will. It is a destiny that we can assume that will fail. So, how can we reconcile that to Jesus? Come on. And let's just spend a few minutes talking about it, because Jesus in the New Testament, of course, brought that phrase in two different types of instance. And he told that in very different circumstances, but they're both appropriate for us to understand this topic. The first circumstance was when Jesus healed somebody who was handicapped, right? And it's in John chapter 5, 1 through 15, I believe. And he said, he healed the man and he said, "See, so and so, you're well again. Stop sinning, or something worse may happen to you." And we could unpack that for another 3 hours, I believe, just in that sentence, which implies that if you are healed, right, if you are also aware of what you're doing wrong and you continue to do wrong, it's going to be much harder for you to make amends. So it is clear that Jesus knew when he said that what caused that person's condition. And this narrative really implies that it was, he was there because of his wrong choices, his sinful choices. And Jesus warned that, yeah, so and so, you're given a second chance, right? I'm healing you, you're given a second chance, but now it's time for you to start thinking about and making better choices. If you, my child, return to the wrong choices, it is such a wasted opportunity, right? So Jesus comes in, he changes the course of this person's life, he shortens the time that he needs to learn, and both he doesn't do, right? The image that comes to my brain is of you trying to learn calculus, and you did not have enough time to study, so you go to an exam, and you're really panicking, and for whatever reason the professor is ill and they postpone the exam. Phew, I got scot free. And now the sin no more is, don't make the mistake of not studying, not preparing. Be ready, because otherwise you wasted such a great opportunity. Those are the things that come to my mind when I see that. But we talked about two instances. The second time is what I think is just an amazing account, and you will remember that, I'm sure. It is the account of the woman that she's found guilty of adultery. Right? It's John again, now chapter 8, and all the accusers were brought before Jesus and asking him, "Hey, are you going to cast the stone?" Right? So stone this woman because she was found guilty. And what does Jesus say? Instead of him accusing her and bless, if you will, this terrible practice of the time, he told each one of those that were there that whoever was without sin to throw the first stone. And of course, one by one, that crowd of people left, and Jesus told the woman, I don't condemn you either. Go and sin no more. And we know that she was caught. There was no denying. She was caught in adultery. She was guilty under the Mosaic laws, and you find those laws in Leviticus and Deuteronomy. But what we want to talk about is, and it's kind of complicated, right? Because it was a choice, right? It was her choice, and under certain standard policy or law, human laws, she deserved, if you will, to be confronted by the judgment, to suffer the punishment that was part of the laws. And it's very interesting because we're now talking about our world of trials and expiations, and or atonements, and many of the readings in spiritism will call upon you need to atone for any time you, quote unquote, broke the law. What law? Divine laws, God's laws. And what are those laws written? They're written in your conscience, right? You have them inside of you. But if we want to say some things like, Marcia, please, tell me, what are those laws? Just remember, Jesus brought one commandment: love your neighbor as you love yourself. And so, from that perspective, let's think about it. If I break this law because I have free will and I can, I am now accountable and responsible to repair the damage that I done when I did not love my neighbor as myself. Does this make sense? I hope it does. And I think it's beautiful because when we go back to Jesus saying sin no more, right? He did not condemn, he did not minimize, right? He simply forgave her. He offered his forgiveness and said, "Hey, woman, go and sin no more." And he mentioned that because he was warning her of all the difficulties that she would have in that life when she chose to do this. And we just need to come to this point where we should be reminded that forgiveness, right? Forgiveness, ours, and that forgiveness given to us always comes with the expectation that we will not continue to do the same mistake. So if I don't know, I gave the example of a second chance given when you don't have to do your exam, but if I do something and that can be, I don't know, I have a history of diabetes in my family, and I know that if I eat what is not good for me, it is tipping the scale for that pre-diabetic, and I'm giving the awareness, and I choose to eat cookies and chocolate and candy. And that will continue the what I call rebelliousness, because I knew better, right? I knew better. And I continue in this case to harm myself. So it is my forgiveness, my awareness, whatever it is there for me to understand. But it's always my choice. Do I continue to do what's wrong? And the diabetic example is not a good one, by the way. Sorry for that. But if we continue to do wrong, it catches up with us. So um, he Jesus, whenever anyone came to him, he urged them with that specific. Don't go back to do the same, right? So I don't know if you are a drug addict and you went into overdose and you get rescued and you overcome. Don't go back to do the same. And there's so many different examples of doing something that will potentially harm yourself or others, and we can come back even after we don't have a tragic consequence. But he says that do not go back because something worse may fall upon you. And I love this that Jesus healed so many, right? Those with leprosy, or in the case of a woman with that was caught in adultery. And implicit in those passages is the teachings about your responsibility, right? So when he talks about it, he's really discussing our ethical values, our the need to fulfill our spiritual duties. And when we do this, we go back to have that sense of balance in our choice. So it is at this point that I'd love to come to you to say, this is what Joanna tells us, right? Let's be aware of our tendency to blame others and be a victim, right? And not only do that, loving to display that. Folks, I'm a victim. I'm a victim. I'm so unhappy. I'm so uncomfortable. She said, be aware of it and be aware that holding on to all that guilt leads you to nowhere. So I would say, let's be aware. Let's be great. Let's be strong. And with that, my friends, I want to just say, hope this has helped you understand this discussion on responsibility. And I hope I can see you next week when we talk about revolution. Thank you so much for your time. Goodbye.